Now for our interview with Jack Sarfatti. Let's turn to Russia. I've heard some of the things that you've said. It sounds as if you've been in touch with some people from Russia, Russia absolutely is pursuing tic-tac type technology.
I think so. I have reason to think that, yeah. But first I should go back in time because we have to go back to the 80s when I was a scientific consultant for the Institute of Contemporary Studies in San Francisco in the early 80s, mid-80s. This was a think tank set up by Cap Weinberger, who was then Secretary of Defense. It was actually set up when Reagan was governor of California in the late 70s. And Brent Scowcroft, you know that name, and Milton Friedman and all these guys. So I was hanging out with all these guys. And I was basically a science consultant. And at that time, through Paul Nietzsche and this guy Marshall Nafee I was talking about, in any case, behind the scenes, we basically got Reagan to do Star Wars. And the thing is that, and we were in touch with Russians too at that time. And the way that worked
Now, hold on a second. What do you mean you're in touch with Russians? What does that mean?
That means that through Estlin, through the Werner Erhard connection, okay, back at Estlin, that Estlin was involved very much with the CIA. It was a CIA operation. You know, Estlin brought, who was, there's Gorbachev Foundation, but Yeltsin. Okay, this is back, I guess, right, after 89, when the Estlin people brought Yeltsin to America. This is before he was president of Russia. They brought him to a supermarket in Texas. And he saw all the food on the thing, and they said Yeltsin got down on his knees and wept that communism was a mistake. Okay, and then they brought Gorbachev. There's the Gorbachev Foundation set up by Estlin people, and any case, and there was Georgy Arbatov, the Institute for U.S. and Canada.
Okay, but there's a big difference between being in touch with Russians in, say, 1990 versus 1980. So
yeah, okay, but wait, true.
Were you in touch with Russians?
Yeah. Well, because this has already happened. Let's see, when was the? Okay, well, what happened was, I was basically talking. Okay, in Reagan's speech rendering nuclear weapons imminent and obsolete, I wrote those lines rendering
so talking about the potential of the Star Wars program, where it would be
there was
lasers in the sky, in space,
all that stuff. And the reason that happened was because Marshall Nafee made this movie with Sean Connery about the meteor hitting. I forget what meteor. I think it was called Meteor. Where they go out, and we were having we were having dinner. Laurie Chickering, who was the head of the Institute for Contemporary Studies, Marshall Nafee and I at Enrico's restaurant. Enrico's was a famous place in San Francisco at that time, and Laurie had wanted to meet Marshall. Marshall was, Marshall was a partner with Al Broccoli in the James Bond movies. In fact, Marshall even had one of the James Bond Aston Martins in his garage, from one of the movies. Powerful man. Okay, that's when I took LSD with the. Any case, so Laurie wanted to meet Marshall about something, and Marshall had just made this movie Meteor with Sean Connery, and Marshall was a stoner, and Laurie didn't know, And so Marshall was, sitting at the round table there with Rico's playing his violin, Rico Banducci, and Marshall said, "Hey, what if aliens attacked us, or a meteor or something was coming?" And he said, and Russia and America got together, and we all got together, for this common enemy, and that way we'd get peace. Okay, So Laurie, so after the lunch was over, Laurie asked me said, "Can you write up what Marshall was talking about?" This is how things get done, okay? So, and I wrote this thing up, and I was also working on things like using gamma ray, because I had worked at Cornell with Hans Bethe, my professor. He was head of theoretical physics Manhattan Project. This is back in the early '60s. We were trying to develop an X-ray laser. A gamma ray laser. And so I was talking about all that stuff. And so I put in all this stuff, and we could also do this and this and that, and render nuclear weapons impotent and obsolete. This is before we knew about the flying saucers rendering nuclear missiles impotent and obsolete, right? Okay. So I wrote this thing up, pie in the sky, about 3 pages. I give it to Laurie Chickering, and a month goes by. I'm walking into Cafe Trieste in North Beach, a local bohemian hangout where Francis Ford Coppola wrote The Godfather.
San Francisco.
Yeah, in North Beach. That's my neighborhood. That's where I live. And Laurie comes in, says, "Hey, Jack, I gave you a paper to Paul Nietzsche. He really liked it." Paul Nietzsche was the chief Reagan arms control guy, okay? And then shortly after, all right, but around that time, I had been interviewed about some of this stuff by RAI, Italian television, and all this stuff. And in any case, the Russians, a guy named Igor Aksharin, a physicist from Moscow, would start sending letters, saying, "Thank you for reading your work, da-da-da-da-da." And we started communicating with him. It's in my book, in my new book, my book, Destiny Major, a new book coming out. There's a chapter by Kim Barafado, who actually was there at the time, and he writes about this whole thing in detail. And so we were communicating with the Russians, with the knowledge of the CIA, about all this kind of stuff,
With the idea being we're working together with the possibility of an asteroid or a meteor.
Yes, yeah, or even aliens.
Okay.
Yeah, even aliens, because my sidekick, Kim Barafado, he was a Navy pilot on board the Ranger. Not a pilot, he was a Navy photographer, combat photographer, travel in the airplanes. And they were seeing UFOs. They were seeing things like Tic Tacs back then. This Vietnam era.
By the way, just to put a pin in it, what happened to the Star Wars program?
Okay,
did it ever create? What did it create?
Behind the scenes, the Israelis are doing all this iron. The Israelis shooting the Star Wars thing. It certainly
Iron
worked.
Shield, is that what it's called?
Yeah, Iron, whatever it's called.
Uh-huh.
The Star Wars thing, it definitely works for like an enemy like Iran, and you see what's happening. For small numbers of rockets, whether it couldn't stop thousands being launched. But
was the idea of Star Wars that the laser would be somehow in space and would be?
Yeah, that's what the Space Force is all about.
Yeah, but we've yet to do that, though, right? We've yet to put a laser in space that can shoot things down.
I don't know about that. I wouldn't assume that. See, if anything, if you talk about Nick Cook and all the secret there, if anything, we have lasers in space. We have all that stuff in space, I think. I think we could assume that. The Chinese are doing it. We're all doing it. That's why we have a Space Force. By the way, I pushed back then, in the 80s, I said, we need to create the United States. I called the United States Space Force the 6th Military Arm.
Well, now it's called the Trump Space Force.
Well, that's fine. I'm glad. I don't know.
I was just in Trump Tower in New York, and they're selling T-shirts.
Yeah, no, it's great.
It says Trump Space Force.
It's great that Trump did it.
Yeah.
But and I'm glad he did it. I was pushing for him. I'm not saying he did it because of me. I don't know. I don't.
Well, let's fast forward to Russians today.
Okay,
Who are you talking today to in Russia?
Okay. So what has happened? So it was all this Russian stuff back then. The Russians were certainly aware of who Jack Sarfatti was back then, okay? All kinds of corroboration on that. And they know about my connection with the Reagan and all that stuff. Oh, one other last thing. Ed Teller, in his biography, Dark Matter, or Dark something or other, says he was totally shocked when Reagan announced SDI because he was kept out of the loop. Reagan didn't trust Teller because he was a Hungarian Jew and thought he might still be a communist sleeper agent. The reason Reagan went for it because he used to work for Marshall Nafee's father in the movies. And they know each other from the movie. I mean, Marshall just called Reagan at the White House. Reagan pick up the phone. "Hey, Marshall, how you doing?" That kind of thing. And when he saw Marshall Nafee's name on this thing I wrote, that decided him to do Star Wars.
How many billions do you think were spent on Star Wars?
I don't know. I'm not in that loop. I don't. But you could ask Chris Mellon, people like that. But I don't know. So the. Now let's go back to about 2015, 2014. Obama's president. Trump has not announced. Okay. I get a call from this guy, Vladimir. We are from Channel 5 in St. Petersburg, and we would like to come and video you about your physics. So, they go. I said, okay. I have photographs. So they come. It's about 2 or 3 hours, taking a bunch of video, and I'm talking about quantum teleportation. I'm talking about all, this far out stuff. I'm talking about a little bit of flying saucers.
Is this different than Russian television? It wasn't RT?
No, it's not RT. It's Channel 5 St. Petersburg. Okay. But if you look at Channel 5 St. Petersburg, it's run by some oligarch who's a close friend of Vladimir Putin's. Just look good.
Anything run in Russia by an oligarch who's close to Putin.
Yeah, right, of course. All right. So... So they said they interviewed me, and by the way, this is way before Tic Tac. Obama's still president. This is before the elections, okay? And they said they'll send me a video. So I didn't hear anything. I can't find anything. They said, and they also said they were going to translate my stuff into Russian. It'll all be in Russian, subtitled, stuff like that. I didn't hear anything. I looked, I couldn't find anything. So I was, all right. But about a year after that, Putin comes out with this big about quantum teleportation, how Russia's going to have this multi-billion-dollar secret project, all the kind of stuff I was talking about on this. Okay, all right. So all right, it's FSB, obviously, right? All right. But here's the clincher, and here you can, because you can see me on Russian television. You'll see, just click on the thing. So what happens? June of 2016, a week before Trump's 70th birthday, Vladimir calls me up. Says, Jack, this is short notice, but we're doing a special program on Donald Trump's 70th birthday, and we'd like to interview you for this. Can we come over? I sort of did it. I was like being on the phone with the computer.
Well, your first question was probably, what happened to my last interview?
Well, I didn't ask that.
Okay.
I'm being diplomatic. At this point, I know I know it's the FSB. I know it's Russian intelligence. Okay, I know it is. So I'll play along. I did tell my CIA friends. They knew. Okay, nobody told me not to do it. Okay. Okay, so a few days they come over. They video me. And this I took pictures myself of them doing it, but they asked me, well, Jack, what does Trump think about Vladimir Putin? Do you think they would get along if Trump were president? First of all, right, why are they asking Jack Sarfatti? Why are they asking me? And I said, I think they would get along, actually, because I knew, sort of. And they asked me, what is Trump's attitude on NATO? What is Trump's attitude on Crimea? What is Trump's attitude on Syria? All these geopolitical questions we're asking me is like, I'm sort of like winging it. I sort of know that. Then I figured I sort of knew why they were doing it. The reason they were doing it, because they knew about my connection with the Reagan administration back in the 80s. They certainly know that. They know all that, right? The Russians are smart. They're not stupid, right? And they knew about my close friendship with Michael Savage. From over many years, since 1975. We're like brothers almost, And Michael Savage is close friends with Trump. And Trump was on his show many times, so I could hear Trump listening. Savage sometimes mentioned his friend Jack Sarfatti. He said, all right. So they know all that. Okay. The most significant thing is, as they were packing up to leave, and they were on my email thing, these guys, we can let them know, And they said, I don't know, Jack, but and he looked at me significantly. He said, they really like you in Moscow.
Who said that?
Vladimir, the guy who interviewed me. Like he was just a guy. He's a grunt man. He's just following orders, right? But they really like you in Moscow.
And did the second interview air?
That you can see. That's aired.
That one did air.
And wait, but they didn't send that to me. I found out. Here's how I found out. So a few months later, a guy named Dmitry Zelnatov from Moscow writes to me an email. He's on Facebook. And he's some kind of editor. He says, Jack, we'd like to translate all your work into Russian. Is that okay? I said, sure, it's okay. All right. Now, I haven't heard from him recently. I know what happened. But then I said, I told Dmitry, I said, hey, who are these Russians, FSB? Oh, and I said, I told him about the thing with Vladimir Putin. And stuff. And he said, yeah, we know Vladimir Putin's really into he's really keen on all this fringe physics, hippie say physics sort of stuff, all this stuff. He's a smart guy, Vladimir, right? And then it was Dmitry who found the link that of me on the show with Trump. Mm-hmm. I'm the only American they show there. I'm at the end twice. I appeared very briefly twice. You should watch it, the whole thing. Okay. And then they say on the show, then Dmitry says, they announce you as being a prominent political science professor.
Weird.
It's weird. Okay, but these are facts. I'm just giving just the facts, man. Okay.
Okay.
So
here's a question for you. If you learn that you're not going to be able to get your meeting from Trump, but that Vladimir Putin would like to sit down and talk with you and know what you know about TikTok.
He already knows. He already knows because all my stuff is online. They already know.
Well, then, so
and they've known for years.
So does Trump. Then, so what's the point of a meeting with Trump if it's all out there?
Okay, no, Trump. Okay, first of all, Trump is under continual attack, as we know. Okay, he's doing what he's doing. Trump's attention. I mean, nothing's going to happen with Trump until he wins in a landslide in 2020. If Trump doesn't win, if a guy like if Bolshevik Bernie wins, we're going to have a shooting civil war. It's going to be like Syria here. I'm sorry to say this, or it's going to be bad, because I already know I'm in touch with all kinds of people. They're not going to let it happen. If it's going to be serious, okay? So, and right now with the SARS, we could be. Even Michael Savage said we could have a perfect storm brewing right now, because if the SARS thing really gets bad, and the economy, coronavirus, and if that, I'm sorry, corona, thank you, and if the economy, if we go into chaos in the next few months, which, by the way, some of these Democrats would like. You heard, what's his name, Bill Maher?
Bill Maher.
Bill Maher? Yeah.
That's the big talking point of today, is that this is being exaggerated to hurt the economy.
But if because of a perfect storm with the economy tanking, which is Trump's strong point, if he loses and Bernie gets in, it's going to be Venezuela in a couple of years. You know what's going to happen. It's going to be Castro.
But getting back to Trump versus Putin in meeting with Trump, if you're saying that all the stuff that you know about this is already out there, what would you have to say to Trump in the meeting? What are you holding back that you would reveal in that meeting?
No, I'm not holding back anything. I'm just saying, hey, Donald, Mr. President, I'm sorry, sir. Mr. President, the race is on.
Waking him up to this is
I think
that can be done and needs to be done.
It needs to be done, and the race is on. The Russians are ahead. They have a head start, and let's do this. What should happen?
Why do you say the Russians have a head start?
Because they interviewed me on all this stuff in 2015. I wasn't talking about Tic Tac.
Yeah, but you weren't talking about Tic Tac.
No, but I was. Here's the point. This is an important fact. I already had the principles of Tic Tac without knowing about Tic Tac in 2011. And in fact, I was involved, and this is very important. In 2011, I was involved in the creation of the 100-Year Starship project with NASA and DARPA. And I was working, a close friend of mine, Creon Levitt, who was kind of a student of mine, was second in command, the right-hand man of General Pete Worden, who was running NASA Ames. This is back 2010, 2011. And he's retired general, head of Space Command, brigadier general with a PhD in physics and astrophysics from University of Arizona, smart guy. He was the head of NASA Ames. And I was on the original committee of 30 people who was setting up this program for DARPA to try to develop a starship, okay? And then I was.
And sorry, let me stop you there. When you say a starship, that's something that is interplaying with gravity.
Yeah, that was everything I'm talking about. I had it back then. I was talking about it.
So you're saying that DARPA did in fact have projects, anti-gravity projects.
Well, but they didn't have my idea. But I was invited. I was invited to Orlando in October of 2011, paid for by NASA, arranged by General Pete Worden, and I gave a talk on the same principles. I gave a talk on all the stuff I'm showing you back in 2011.
By the way, Michael, remind me, what was the name of the university in Scotland that Dundee University?
Yeah.
And do you remember the guy's name that we found there? So part of this guy, huh?
Andrew Kidd, he was working on an anti-gravity device in the 80s. He's still alive. He emailed me back.
Well, get him in touch with me.
Wasn't it Kit?
Get him in touch. Put him in touch with me.
Kit.
Kidd. I will do that.
Okay, so do you know anything about this Dundee University by chance?
Well, it's a good university.
Okay, and they have a big physics program there?
I don't know, but I would not. I'm not rejecting it out of hand. I'd like to get in touch with them.
Okay, so
because I am working with people in Britain, you know.
So because Turber claims that this technology was originated from a university. He mentioned Dundee University, that it found its way to DARPA, and then it was developed through DARPA.
Look, they may have some exotic propulsion thing, but it's not Tic Tac. It's not warp drive. I'm pretty sure of that, because of what the guy said about the 1G. That's bullshit. That's nonsense. It's not. They may have something, but it's not what I'm talking about. They have something else that might be important, but it's not what I'm talking about. But let me get this back to 2011. So all the basic stuff I'm talking about now, I was giving a speech on in 2011 before I knew anything about Tic Tac. My idea hasn't changed. Got a little better, got a little more refined. But I was talking about that, and I said it might relate to UFOs. That brought the house down because they didn't want to talk about UFOs. And in fact, Sharon Weinberger, who's a defense journalist, wrote an article about the big commotion I created at this meeting talking about UFOs, and everybody tried to put me down on UFOs. So I was talking about the tic-tac propulsion system, same one I'm talking about today, back then in 2011. And she wrote an article that got a lot of coverage. It was on the BBC. You can see the article yourself about Jack Sarfatti and this. And then this guy, Gary Beckham, wrote an article about UFOs crash and burn at 100-year Starship. It got a lot of publicity. I got a big brouhaha. And also Doug Trumbull was there. Doug Trumbull, the guy who did special effects on 2001, he's into UFOs. And he's the only one who defended me. And a bunch of the guys who were putting me down, Eric Davis and this guy, what's his name, John Kramer, they're now they're now on the UFO the Tic Tac bandwagon, but then they were putting me down. But the point is, I announced it in this speech, which got a lot of worldwide coverage, and the Russians saw that.
So whether or not the Tic Tac that we've seen in the videos is in fact U.S. craft or instead from the future, what we do know 1,000% is that the U.S. itself, military, Black Project, has been researching this, investigating it. Both one of the reasons we know it is through that patent. I mean, we may call this patent to be a BS patent, but we know what he's trying to patent. He's trying to patent something similar to the Tic Tac. And there's also that letter that
the underwater thing too.
Yeah, and there's the chief information officer for the Navy who writes that letter. You probably heard about this, that he sends to the patent office. The patent office is about to deny this.
Yeah,
and they said that because they say it's not possible.
Yeah,
and this chief information officer, if I'm getting it right, or technology officer for the Navy, writes a letter to the patent officer and says that, well, that's not true. It is possible. We are experimenting with this. And China, actually, we think may even be ahead of us. And subsequent to that, they grant the patent.
Listen, I hope what he's saying is true. I don't think it is true. I think it's some kind of sophisticated disinformation campaign to get the Chinese to go off on a wrong thing. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's true. But I know it's not Tic Tac. They may have something. They may have some kind of new propulsion, exotic. They may have some kind of electromagnetic propellantless propulsion system in which there's no jet exhaust, no gas coming out the back. But it's still basically a rocket. It's not going to have any of the properties. They're still going to feel G-forces. In fact, the guy admitted they feel G-force. See, what I'm talking about, there's no G-forces. So they may have something that flies. I don't think they do. Maybe they do. But it's not what I'm talking about. And it's not Tic Tac.
It would not be something that defies gravity. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it would not be something. It would not be something. It would not be something that you could do these, 5,000 mile an hour hairpin turns that would look like thousands of G's, that would kill anybody inside. It would not be that. They may have something important.
Have you read this patent recently?
I looked at it, but frankly, it seems like so much bullshit that it doesn't fit anything I know about physics. I mean, there's a few things.
Let's read one more thing from it before we wrap up. It says, it is possible to reduce the inertial mass and hence the gravitational mass of a system object in motion by an abrupt...
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's the thing that turned me off. As soon as I read that, I used toilet paper. I use it for toilet paper. Okay. As soon as I see that, you know why?
Why? Because to me it's very impressive.
No, but let me tell you something. First of all, if you were to do that, that's called violating the equivalence principle. And if you were to do that, you would create a bomb more powerful than a nuclear bomb would explode. It might destroy the Earth. And the way to understand that is to read a book called Just 6 Numbers by Sir Martin Rees, who was British Astronomer Royal, Master of Trinity College. You don't want to. If you change the inertial mass, you basically that's like a nuclear bomb but more powerful.
So he flat out says this in the summary. It says the present invention is directed to a craft using an inertial mass reduction device.
Bullshit.
So
total bullshit.
You cannot have an inertial mass reduction device.
You can have it by manipulating the Higgs mechanism, but if you do that, you got a bomb. You have a very. Let me explain this. This is very important. This shows. As soon as I see that, I reach for my delete button. As soon as I see that, because I know this is total bullshit. Now the thing is this. There's also confusion. These guys are so confused because they don't understand basic general relativity. These engineers who write this nonsense. Remember, I was saying it's 0 G, the warp drive. The inertial mass doesn't matter. The inertial mass drops out of the problem. The inertial mass has the inertial mass of the Tic Tac has nothing to do with the way the Tic Tac is moving. It dropped. This is called Einstein's equivalence principle, that when everything accelerates in a gravitational field, everything accelerates in the same rate. Doesn't matter what it's made out of. That's called the equivalence principle. So right away, Mr. Pais does not understand Einstein's equivalence principle, which is the foundation, the bedrock of general relativity of Einstein's theories, which have been battle tested and proved. Okay.
So, what about the way he describes the craft? I'm just curious if this would sound similar to the type of craft you would have in mind that would be developed. There's an outer resonant cavity wall and inner resonant cavity wall.
Yeah.
The microwave emitters create high-frequency electromagnetic waves throughout the resonant cavity, causing the outer resonant cavity wall to vibrate in an accelerated mode and create a local polarized vacuum outside the outer resonant cavity wall.
It's bullshit. It's bullshit. It has a few things that sound a little bit like what I'm talking about, but no, because it turns out first of all, the polarized. So, see, there's no numbers in there. If you were to try to do that and put numbers in, you'd find out that it required too much energy to do it. That's the whole point. There
are some formulas. I don't know what those formulas are.
Yeah, I looked at it. Now, the formulas are bullshit. They're not anything that a physicist in quantum electrodynamics and a physicist.
You just look at one of those formulas and tell us what it's trying to.
Well, I don't know because
portray.
I don't know what it's trying to put. I'd have to. It's just.
Stay on the mic while you do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's just it makes no sense to me because he doesn't give enough background. It's like out of nowhere. It's just he has to.
Well, you'd have to reread the whole thing.
Yeah, I have to read the whole thing. But it's just it has nothing. It has.
By the way, it has
nothing to do with what I'm talking about, which is mainstream theoretical physics that any physicist would understand.
What do you think about the fact that the patent was issued, that it was granted?
Well, I think as I told Chris Mellon, who was on the Senate Intelligence Committee at one point, I think this has to be investigated by the Senate Intelligence Committee and see what's really going on here. And I think, like they called Richard Feynman on the Challenger thing, they should call Jack Sarfatti to be an expert witness on this, and let's go over it very carefully with other physicists like Kip Thorne, and let's see what's going on there. That's the only way to do it properly.
Okay, before we wrap up, I want to talk to you about, just take a step back from all of this, because I know you've done lots of deep thinking about physics and consciousness and so forth, and we talked about psychics, and that ultimately you basically believe that psychic abilities are real and can be explained from a scientific perspective.
Absolutely.
So give us a touch of that, and then we're going to finish with the meaning of life.
Okay. The meaning of life.
And we're going to wrap that all up in the next few minutes.
Sweet mystery of life. At last I found you. Now at last I know the meaning of it all. I used to be at Gilbert and Sullivan Tenor, college.
Okay.
Okay. Now remember the CIA and the Defense Department guys, the spooks back in. Even as a kid and in the 70s with the SRI and remote viewing and all that, they want to know two things. How does consciousness work? How do flying saucers fly? So I've been given two problems to work on. And I claim I've solved them both. By the way, I'm working with Nick Cook on all this stuff.
Okay.
We have a group in Italy trying to do all this. We have the Italian Air Force on our side now, and they're trying to get EU funding to do exactly make the metamaterials in Italy. We have an advanced research institute of postgraduate institute that on board to do this, so it may happen in EU.
Okay, so we've talked about the flying saucer part. Now we're talking about the consciousness part.
So it has to do with what's called quantum entanglement. Einstein called it telepathy. Spooky action at a distance. That two particles, even though they're widely separated, if they share a common what's called quantum mechanical wave function, that they're in instant contact with each other. All right. So now the thing is this. There is this thing called quantum entanglement, which is now a big part of quantum computing, big part of what's called quantum cryptography. The Chinese are building this quantum internet in space. This is all very big stuff. And it was if you read How the Hippies Save Physics by MIT professor David Kaiser, he credits my group with kickstarting this whole effort back in the 70s when everybody thought it was crazy too. They all thought it was spooky, So the point is this. In quantum mechanics, you have this entanglement, but you cannot use the entanglement. I cannot beam a message from my mind to your mind through entanglement according to quantum mechanics. Because what happens is, if I try to do that, there's local noise, your brain will have noise in it that will mask the message. You won't be able to get the message. The message may be there. You could see a message was there, but you have to do it after the fact. You have to use special techniques to decode the message. Okay, so that's where it stood. So when you read David Kaiser's book, Episode Physics, the official line there, oh, Jack and his friends, they created this stuff, but they failed because of this effect, this effect. Now, it turns out that's true in quantum mechanics, but quantum mechanics is only a limiting case of a more general, I call it post-quantum theory. And in post-quantum theory, which is what living matter is, post-quantum theory, it turns out if you pump a system resonantly with the right energy, you can use entanglement to actually send messages. You could actually see the message. In other words, a telepath like Uri Geller, can send you a message. Or the Greys, the Greys, they can telepathically communicate because living matter, biology, has to do with what's called post-quantum phenomena. And there's something called, it's hard to get into it, there's something called action-reaction. It turns out in quantum theory has to do with what are called quantum waves. The quantum waves, they call them probability waves, but they're thought waves, they're mental waves. In other words, the universe divides into a mental, physical, it's a physical wave, but they're like mental waves and there are material waves, okay? In ordinary quantum mechanics, the mental quantum probability wave is able to act, to move, to change the motion of matter, but there's no direct back reaction of the matter on the mental wave. It's a certain approximation, which happens in what's called thermodynamic equilibrium. And in that system, you cannot use telepathy or entanglement as a communication or control, or say command communication, a C3. Quantum entanglement by itself cannot be a command control communication channel if you're in thermodynamic equilibrium. But if you pump the system off equilibrium in a certain way, in a resonant way, then you can use it. And in fact, that's what's happened. That's what the remote view is. That's what they were doing at SRI.
Okay, so these are things that are theoretically possible or have actually been
done? Well, they were seeing it all the time in the laboratory, but they didn't understand how it could happen according to physics. So I've explained what they're seeing in terms of physics, just like the Tic Tac.
So you believe the remote viewing actually happened?
Yes.
And now you're explaining it from a physics perspective.
Yes, from physics. And it turns out the physics that explains it is not that different from the physics that explains Tic Tac. The two things are very interrelated, which is why I am saying that it's a conscious computer on board the Tic Tac that's controlling it, because the physics is very similar. There's an overlap in the physics.
Has there ever been a controlled study to prove that remote viewing really happened?
Yeah, I say
scientific, because you got debunkers out there that say none of this has ever been.
Yeah, well, some of them they want it to be known, and some are just idiots, and some are just workers. They're afraid they don't want the public to know. But I'm not the person to ask. You should ask Russell Todd. Come in. You should ask Kit Green from the retired from the CIA, the key guy who monitored all this stuff. And they say, I don't want to fight. That's not my battle to fight. There are plenty of guys willing to fight that battle. Dean Radin.
But you're saying it makes sense to you that remote viewing should be possible.
I know exactly how it works in terms of laws. That doesn't violate any laws of nature. And
a human theoretically can do it without the aid of anything external to the human?
Yes. In fact, you have Russell Todd come on. Have him come on. He gives workshops in developing the ability. He says everybody can do it. It's a natural.
But it's not something you hear much about.
That's because of that's a whole reason. I don't want to get into why that's with the whole Marxist materialism. There's a whole other thing to get into that cultural market. We get into that. It's another show.
Well, let's just ask this question: is the CIA still employing it?
Of course they are. Of course they are.
So they've got people sitting in rooms,
and not just the
remote
CIA,
viewing Vladimir Putin.
And Vladimir Putin has. Believe me, they're doing it. In fact, that's one of the reasons we started doing it, because who was the head of the CIA at that time, back in the 60s, wrote a paper. They were afraid the Russians were ahead, and they probably are, of course. Yeah, that's a whole, it's a lot of literature on that. Okay,
so this is a long stretch to take it to the next level. Let's just do it, and that is what is what we see? What is the universe? Obviously, I'm sure I presume you believe in the Big Bang, but maybe we'll start with that. But ultimately, what is this? Because I've heard you say in an interview something that the whole universe is seeming like a consciousness or
Well,
a thought,
okay,
or a
let's-
thought, maybe you said.
Well, okay, but no, okay, that's Sir James Jeans back in the 20s, one of the early philosophers of quantum mechanics. He was an astronomer, I believe, and he said the universe is more and more looking like a great thought rather than a great machine. And he was referring to the fact that the quantum waves of probability are really like mental waves. They're physical thought. Their mental fields are physical fields, but they're quantum information fields. And we've only recently begun to realize that you have to take that literally. So James Jeans already saw it back in the 20s, and even Niels Bohr. People were speculating. It's even the great, John von Neumann, Fritz London. They all kind of sort of knew it, but Eugene Wigner even. They say collapse of the wave function generates consciousness, but So
Okay.
the idea is floating around in a vague way. I've made it precise with the actual equations, what it is. No more bullshit. So it has to do with something that David Bohm did. David Bohm worked with Einstein. I worked with David Bohm. It has to do with that. And the universe is a great thought, but it's also a great machine. It's both. And it's the two-way relationship between the great thought and the great clockwork universe of Newton, the two together, what's called action-reaction, and that generates consciousness. So it is possible we live in a conscious universe, yes. And there's all kinds of stuff I get into detail. It turns out the Teilhard de Chardin, Teilhard de Chardin was a Jesuit priest who was also a cosmologist and astronomer. Some of the Jesuits are pretty smart, and he had this idea, the omega point, that in the far future, the mind of God is actually in the far future, and we're being this destiny and pulling us toward the mind of God. So even though it was a Big Bang, but the Big Bang was designed from the future back in time through these loops in time they're talking about. Okay, see, it all fits. And
so bottom line, you think there is some ultimate meaning to the universe that is not known.
I know. I think there's a God. But I know what it is. I know the equation. I found. Okay.
You have the God equation?
The God equation. But you know who said that? You know who first said that? Ronald Reagan, because Ronald Reagan was reading my stuff. Ronald Reagan, and it's I think it's his 1986 State of the Union.
Okay.
Reagan, this is important. Look at the speech. Reagan says, and physicists have found the equations for God. The physicist, Jack Sarfatti, that's who he's talking. That's who Reagan's talking about.
Well, I believe in a scientific explanation for God. So, okay, so tell us then what or who is God?
Well, God is this cosmic intelligence that's on what's called our distant future horizon, which is this giant conscious. Okay, God is this cosmic scale conscious computer. Sending the spacecraft from the future if you want. And by the way, I'm not the only guy who's come up with this. Fred Hoyle, who was the professor at Cambridge, when Fred Hoyle died, Stephen Hawking took Fred Hoyle's chair. Fred Hoyle wrote a book called The Intelligent Universe. He used to come down to La Jolla all the time. Fred Hoyle was when I was a graduate student. So this is a.
And what would this theory say about multiple universes?
Leaves it moot. It's possible. Depends what you mean. There are different meanings. There are just several different meanings of multiple universes. I don't want to get into details now. It's too much. If you want to do other shows, we can talk about that. Depending what you mean, there could be multiple universes. But we're talking about our universe, the universe that we can see with telescopes and stuff like that. It could be one of many universes. And the intelligence, I'm only talking about the intelligence in our universe. Maybe there's other universe, and then you maybe can communicate with them through wormholes, through stargates too. But the point is, I call it the Destiny Matrix. I wrote a book called The Destiny Matrix. And the thing is, there's this physicist named Yaki Aharonov who Obama gave a science medal to, who is talking the same thing I'm talking about. He calls destiny waves from the future, history waves from the past. It's happening 2 ways in time. So I'm not the only crazy guy talking about this. It's this crazy Jewish guy, Yaki, who got the presidential medal from Obama talking about it.
Your turn. You got anything that you want to, anything I missed or any burning question you have that, do you want to ask it on mic or is it short?
I'll ask it on mic.
Okay. All right, we're going to give Michael the mic here for a quick follow-up, who's delved into this for many more years than I have.
So here's my only question about spacecraft coming from the future or the Tic Tacs coming from the future, because, yes, a lot of people have said this. Got to be honest, it doesn't resonate with me, and I'll tell you why. If I am from the future and I am a result of human intelligence, even if I am a super artificial intelligence, I would postulate that my values and my sensitivity towards the human animal would be such that I might obscure myself. So if I'm a Tic Tac, why am I hanging out around the Nimitz encounter? And I do believe that the Tic Tac was not made by man. But where it came from, I don't know. So my question is, like Jacques Vallée said, that perhaps the phenomena exists right beyond our understanding. So
well, Jacques is wrong. He's just wrong. I know Jacques very well. I know Jacques from the 70s.
I know you do, and that's why I'm posting. Because
Jacques is simply wrong. Jacques is a good guy. He doesn't know the physics I know. Jacques he's an observational astronomer. He's a good social psychologist. A lot of Jacques' field work with contactees and stuff like that, his psychology as a social scientist, he's very good. But he simply does not know what I know, and he's just acting out of a lack of knowledge. Okay, if he knew what I knew, he'd be. In fact, he may be changing his mind.
Let me just say this.
Why would they reveal themselves to the Navy?
That's basically all I'm saying. Because listen, I don't know where they came from.
But I do know.
But Jack,
I know.
Jack, I'm impressed with you. I love this talk. But this is just something that I've always thought about long before today. People have been talking about this idea.
Okay, the fact of the matter is, I was contacted as a child.
I understand that.
By this intelligence, told me what was going to happen 20 years in the future, which did happen and is still happening, and everything is happening according to plan.
And I would say to
there
you,
not what if. I'm interested in what happened. What is, not what if. I could speculate the moon is made out of green cheese, too. I know. Here's the point. The point is, there's a Star Trek movie. Is it Star Trek 4
It's
or
number
5?
4. I know which one you're talking about.
Okay. Now, it turns out that movie, I was asked by Paramount Pictures to actually explain all this stuff, and they have me in the director's cut, the DVD, talking about this kind of stuff in Paramount Pictures. Because in that movie, you remember there's a crazy rocket scientist developing the warp drive. That's me.
Right.
That's me. I was also, by the way, in Back to the Future, I was hanging out with Francis Ford Coppola and his Rat Pack back then. That we wrote a book, Space, Time, and Beyond. That I'm the model for the crazy scientist coming back from the future.
Jack,
that I believe.
Jack,
no, it's true.
Jack,
and so is Kimberly.
Just roll with me. Just 1 second.
Yeah.
Just hear me out.
Yeah.
My point is, I'm thinking if I am a result of humans, then I have a ethical feeling about this. And I just don't think you expose yourself to humans.
Well, that's
if I'm a traveler, if I'm a hunter on the Serengeti,
but you don't exist unless I create you. Don't you get that? That's what you're not getting.
I do get that.
I created you. I'm going to create you. Well, I am in the process.
The computer in the future is going to create me right now. Is that what you're saying?
No, the computer in the future is saying, Jack, we want to give you the information so you can create us.
Right, I understand that. So
it's what's called in physics. It's called a Novikov. Igor Novikov is a physicist in Russia, in Moscow, who works with Kip Thorne at Caltech on all this stuff. They publish papers, what are called self-consistent loops in time.
Jack, I get it. Last question. What if I'm deceiving you because this is a way that I feel like you can understand it best?
Well, what if? But this is idle speculation. I have no. Let's put it this way. But what? Here's I will
it's
say.
only idle speculation in the fact that many
you,
people are arguing this with no evidence that I can see.
Was it Lagrange said to Napoleon, "I have no need of that hypothesis." You're making it complicated. I don't want to insult you, but as Einstein said,
I'm not making it complicated, Jack.
Let me quote Einstein. Einstein said, "Any intelligent fool can make something more complicated. It takes genius to make it simple."
Okay, let me. How about just answering this? Is very important. Why would they reveal themselves to the Navy as they did?
Because obviously why? Because then people can take it seriously. It's a military threat. And that's why that led to October. That led to Tucker Carlson. Do you know Tucker personally, by the way? Have you met him?
No.
Tucker Carlson has given shows on this.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he should have me on his show. He has Nick Pope, who's a nice, sweet guy, but doesn't understand the physics. He has people who don't know he has Louis Elizondo, who's a very good guy and is trying, but is not a physicist, doesn't have the intellectual equipment to explain what's going on.
So they're revealing themselves because they want us to develop it.
Yes, of course. And then
there you go.
Yeah,
nice and simple.
Yeah. It's a military threat.
My friend, we could keep going, but we're hungry, right? Let's go eat.
Right, let's go.
Okay. Thank you once again to our good friend Jack Sarfatti for that great, fun discussion. Thank you to our producer, Michael Parker. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back soon with another episode.
Thank you for listening to The Hidden Truth Show with Jim Breslow. You can find us at hiddentruthshow.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Hidden Truth Show. Join us again next week for another episode of Hidden Truth Show with Jim Breslow.